Welcome back to the Canyons News Election Series, where I've been taking a look at some of the most important issues in the presidential race. In the previous 3 episodes, I spoke with a local political expert about the economy, healthcare, and the Supreme Court. In today's episode, we compare and contrast the 2 candidates on the topic of immigration. This to me has been one of the most discussed issues, I think, of this election from what I've seen, and that's immigration. With 61% of all voters, 39% of Harris voters, and 82% of Trump voters, Trump's policies have been just about as hardline as you can get in mainstream American politics, talking about mass deportations, re-implementing the Muslim ban, obviously just the idea of militarizing the border in general. And then on Harris's side, I think this has been one of her weaker points, honestly, being the border czar, and then having what has been, I think both sides can admit, a chaotic 4 years at the very least. It's not the best reflection, at least on the surface. At the moment, how do you think this topic is impacting the election?
So I think ultimately Republicans always this is an issue that the Republican Party always does better on than the Democratic Party. So I think ultimately what Harris is trying to do is reduce the extent to which Trump is seeing better on immigration than she is. I think, again, in terms of an unforced error on the part of former President Trump, the Senate, as I'm sure you know, negotiated a very tough border bill. It was negotiated by a very conservative senator, Senator Langford, Senator Sinema, and Senator Murphy. So somebody from the right, somebody from the senators, somebody from the left. And Trump, in true Trumpian fashion, told them to vote that bill down, that he wanted to retain that as an issue in the election. He didn't. So what Harris has been doing is saying, you were the one who killed this bill.
Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it. But Donald Trump believes a border deal would hurt his campaign. So he ordered his allies in Congress to kill the deal.
Now, in truth, Republicans voted it down in the Senate, and it probably would have never passed in the House anyways. But Trump coming out and saying, vote this down, I want this as an issue, I think has helped reduce the deficit. President Biden implemented an executive order, and there's been a dramatic reduction in they're called border encounters, over the last few months. So it's become less of an issue. So it'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks whether Harris has successfully reduced the favorability rating, the advantage that Trump has on immigration. But that's a challenge that Democrats always face.
What do you make of that moment in the debate when he kind of goes off on that tangent about this whole conspiracy theory?
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
So I'm obviously from a generation that isn't totally politically involved. And so for most of my friend group, most of my fellow students that I know who aren't watching the whole debate, they don't really care that much. But when you go on Twitter or TikTok after the fact, that's the clip. What do you make of a moment like that? What is the significance of a moment like that?
There are times when I feel like Donald Trump is his own worst enemy, right? And for people who agree with his policies in general, so people who are concerned about the border, who think it's important that we be able to control who's coming into the country and not coming into the country, they must be pulling their hair out when they hear things like that. In part because what he was saying about Haitians in Springfield was simply not true, right? The mayor of Springfield is a Republican. The governor is a Republican. They said it's not true. I heard him recently say that if he's elected, they'll get all those Haitians out of Springfield. They're there legally on something called temporary protective status. They were sought by the political leaders in Springfield because during the pandemic, employers had fled, and so there was a labor shortage. So they actively sought to bring them in. Now, I think it's important that when you bring in 15,000 people of a different culture into a relatively small city, there are going to be problems. Springfield has reached out to the state and reached out to the federal government for assistance, right? And complained about how it's been lacking. So that for somebody who's concerned about immigration and the impact of immigration, there was something to talk about that would be politically useful, unless you talk about it in terms of eating cats and dogs. Another very potent issue that he could have used, he went to conspiracy theories and false claims.
Reporting for Canyons News, I'm Eli Kern.